Hey guys, how are all of you beautiful people? Hope you are doing fine, and yes, this is the next part of Reborn in My Hero Academia with cheats. Where a man is reborn in the world of My Hero Academia and forced to bear the burdens of his predecessors. Thankfully he has a solid quirk and an enchanted gift to see him through. Watch as he nukes the world timeline down the shitter and dominates his Hero Academia. Hope you like the video. Let's start. I stood in front of a 5-story building in suburban Tokyo, and took a deep breath, before walking in. Almost immediately, I smelled a deeply unpleasant stink. I looked at the source, a blue-skinned girl, rushing into the bathroom by the lobby, clutching her eyes in pain. My first thought was, who puts a bathroom by the fucking office lobby? That's a genius idea. A bathroom by the entrance that people can use, easy to access, and openly available. Moreover, the other bathrooms elsewhere can then be your own private utopia. After all, a man's bathroom is his very own personal sanctuary, free of worries, bills, nagging wives and crying children, and no self-respecting man allows another to encroach up it. Truly, Nighty is a man of vision. He. I laughed to myself at the double entendre. I followed the hallway to the elevator, clicking the button to call it over. As the elevator doors opened, a huge insect slammed into my face. Ouch! I cried. Sorry. The insect said, offering a helping hand. It was Centipede. It's okay. I shouldn't have stood with my nose to the door, I said jokingly. Ha! He chuckled in an odd insectoid clicking. You must be Shikimori Haru, the new intern. I saw your match. 1 vs 9. That was amazing. Centipede-san. Bubble Girl called out from the bathroom. I must go now. Sir is waiting for you upstairs. Go quickly now. He doesn't like tardiness, he said, pointing at the lift. I entered the lift and rode it up to the main office. Walking over, I knocked on the door, and waited. What happened, Bubble Girl? If you blew another stink bubble into your eyes, then wash before coming here. Came a voice from the other side. Actually, I came here about the internship, I said, opening the door. Aha! The boy with the big words. And yes. About the internship, here, catch this. He said, throwing one of his signature seals at me with blinding speed. I immediately stopped it in place, and grabbed it in the air, much to Nighty's delight. Good. But how about this? He said, throwing 3 of his seals at once from different angles. How is this even humanly possible? Each of these seals are insanely heavy for their size, and he's still throwing these at speeds befitting someone with a muscle augmentation quirk. That's some anime logic bullshit. 2 days in a row. How lucky. Of course, as before, I caught them off their course mid-air. All right. Here, give me the form, I'll stamp it, he said, extending a hand. As I went to hand over the form, suddenly he threw 10 seals at me, bouncing them off the walls, striking at me from behind. Again. How the fuck is he throwing these seals with that much power? And how did he bounce them off the fucking wall? These are made of metal, aren't they? Do the laws of physics mean nothing to you, glasses man? Thankfully, I had anticipated this and instantly activated remote control of the seals even as they left his hand, which I now used to slow them down and stopped them all in place, simultaneously handing him the form with the smoothest fucking slide and an ice-cold expression. Better than I expected, he said, as he pulled out another seal to stamp my form, only to notice that it had already been stamped. Much better than I expected. You noticed? He asked. Of course. I said, why would you give me ink-lined seals if you didn't want me to stamp the form myself? Ha 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 ha. He began to laugh out loud for some unknown reason. Everyone is bonkers in this godforsaken world, aren't they? Meanwhile, Nighty wiped a tear from his eye, before continuing. Good. You're drafted. Any questions? Just one. How many of those seals are you packing? More than enough. He answered. Now, Mario is waiting outside. Follow him and patrol around the neighborhood, for a start. I nodded and left the room, and miraculously, there he was. Mario Tagate. Future one for all candidate and generally cool guy. Did Nighty plan this from the start? Because Mario sure wasn't here when I entered the office and I couldn't have been in there for more than 2 minutes, and I'm damn sure he wasn't in the vicinity of the office when I last checked. After all, I have a range of over 30 kilometers. Was he slinking about in the ground or something? I used Laplace Jr. to find out. Apparently he was. Note to self, next time use Red Reality to check the ground too. Hell, I am using Red Reality to check everything from now on. Giving the whole city and every surrounding biosphere a thorough check, I looked back at Mario, who was waving a hand in front of my face. Ground control to Haru. Are you there? He said. Yes. I replied, just a bit surprised. So, we're patrolling the neighborhood. Yes. He said, walking to the elevator, gesturing me to follow. Patrolling is a very important aspect of being a hero. Being on the lookout for crime, distress, of even helping old ladies cross the street. All of it matters when it comes to being a hero and maintaining an image of safety to the people. Because when they see you out there, they'll think, there's a hero here. I'm safe now. Just our presence itself is a deterrent to crime. Ooh-ha. But are there even any villains around here? After all, no villain would want to hang around anywhere in walking distance of a hero agency, right? I asked. You'd be surprised. Lots of dumb villains around these days. Though they're mostly harmless. It's the smart ones, the ones that hide in the shadows of society, that you have to really worry about. He explained. Is that so? I said, are there any of those around here though? There are a couple. There's a drug operation on the south side of the city, a chain of illegal brothels in the western slums, and then there's the local Yakuza outposts. He said. Fucking finally. Say, about these Yakuza outposts, is there anything odd about them? I pushed. He intoned curiously before answering, nothing much. Though there is this Yakuza war going on between the remnants of the Abegawa Tenchu Akai and the newly established Yakuza group, Shihasakai. Though, calling it a war wouldn't be right. It's more of a scuffle. The Abegawa Tenchu Akai aren't much of a group anymore. Their top brass was murdered by a vigilante a couple years back, so now they are in a sort of decline. Why are you asking about this? It's not like we're going to fight them. He said. Why not? I asked. Well, the Abegawa Tenchu Akai are almost disbanded, and as for the Shihasakai, remember what I told you about the smart villains? He said. I nodded. The young leader of the Hasakai is one of them. He's good at hiding his involvement in the crimes committed by the mooks he sends to do the dirty jobs. They are desperately loyal to their boss and might as well be mutes. And that's if they are even caught in the first place. Sir has been running an investigation on them ever since they expanded their reach to this city. But in all this time, Sir hasn't found a single shred of evidence or clue to any of their activities. That's just how good they are at covering their tracks. Myrio answered solemnly, before waving happily at a passers-by. I see. Then how about using the police to do it? I suggested. To do what? Myrio asked. Pin some false charges on the leader, drag him out for an interrogation and then convict him on trumped-up charges. Then using his bail as a hangman's noose on the Hasakai to get them to cooperate with the investigation. You just told me that they are desperately loyal, right? Won't they surrender to save their leader? I replied. At once Myrio grabbed me by the arm, dragging me into a nearby alley. Pinning me to a wall, he looked me in the eyes, tinged with anger and disappointment. We are heroes. We don't use dirty tactics like them. When we move with righteousness, in pursuit of justice. We do not pervert the course of justice with false accusations. He cried. Why not? Most other heroes do that. The police does that. Politicians do that. Why shouldn't you? It's the most efficient method to rid the world of evil. Don't you want to stop them? Every day we don't move against them gives them another opportunity to harm innocents. Is that what you want? More innocent people getting hurt. For what? Your morals. Principles. Are your principles worth more than the lives of the people? He thought for a moment, grinding his teeth in doubt. No. We do it this way because it's the right thing to do. Even if it gives the villains more opportunities to hurt people. Because all I have to do is save them before they can be harmed. He said. That's a good answer. I said, surprising him. What? He asked. I was just testing you. Goodness. Didn't you see my speech in the sports festival? Of course, I wouldn't suggest such a thing. I said. He chopped me on the head, smiling. How dare you test me? Aren't you supposed to be the Kuhai here? He asked playfully. He. What can I say, I just like messing with people. I said, rubbing my head. Although, I do have a plan to bring down the Hasakai, if you were wondering. I said, dropping the bombshell. Wait, what? He asked. Why else do you think I chose an agency over 2 hours from my house? I said. Because you admired Sir's work. That I do. But it's not the whole reason. I have some information that could get you a legitimate in on the Hasakai's headquarters. Are you serious? Myrio asked. Completely. I answered. Then we should get this, Sir, right away. He said, retracing our steps back to the agency. So you have some information that could give us access to the Hasakai's locations? Nighty asked, clearly still distrustful on my words. Well, that depends on how capable you are, to be honest. After all, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I said. Are you insulting me? On your first day here? Nighty asked, leaning forward onto his desk, now angered. I am questioning your willingness to use your quirk to its fullest extent to solve this case. I've heard about your self-imposed limits, after all. Nighty sighed. Just tell me what you know. He said, leaning back into his chair, and gesturing at me to begin. All right then. Let's start from the basics. Do you know about underground MMA brawl tournaments? Yes. What about them? Nighty asked. Would I be right to assume that they are illegal? I posited. Yes, they are illegal. Why do you ask? Nighty responded. So it would be safe to assume that a willing and voluntary participant would be treated as a criminal. I asked. They certainly would. Nighty said, a curious smile spreading on his otherwise stoic face. And if someone were to harbor one such criminal, they could be said to be an accomplice. I asked. That could be considered. He said, after taking a moment to think. Do you happen to have the contact information of the rabbit hero, Mirko? I said, derailing the conversation. I do. But I don't understand where this is coming from or going to, for that matter. He asked. Well, it happened a couple weeks ago. I was investigating underground MMA rings for a piece, and happened to chance upon a particularly juicy rumor. A previous champion and known battle junkie, by the name of Rapper, is currently under the Hasakai's employment. This certain Rapper is also a known associate of another battle junkie, a certain rabbit hero, Mirko. I think you see where I'm going with this. I explained. You want to ask Mirko to help capture him and use him as an excuse to assault the Hasakai's headquarters. Nighty smiled wide, and speculated. Bingo! I said, pointing at him. And might I ask, why you, a student of UA High, happen to know of such detailed information? Nighty asked. I have my sources. I said, mirroring his sentiment. And these sources would be? Mario asked. Secret. A journalist never bears their sources. Who'd trust me with information, if I did that? I have spent 2 years building up a reputation in the community. Can't be throwing an entire information network for small fish like the Hasakai, now can I? I said with a flourish. Nighty sat in his chair, contemplating for a moment. Then he spoke hesitantly. If, and this is a big if, we could get into the Hasakai's headquarters, we'd still need more detailed information about their members, strengths and quirks. I imagine they won't go down without a fight. He said. Oh, that's easy enough. They have 8 special members called the 8 Holy Somethings. I don't recall the moniker. They have a barrier user, 1 brawler, that would be Rapper, 1 person with a stabby paralysis quirk, another with an interrogation quirk, 1 drunk who can transfer his drunkenness to others in a small radius, 1 tiny guy that can mimic the properties of his surroundings, and 1 giant that can drain people's powers or stamina or some such. I just remember he had a draining quirk. There are 3 more people in a team, 1 that can grow crystals of some sort, another that can chew through stuff, and the last that can do something relating to taking stuff from people. Small-scale teleportation, maybe. It's uncertain. Then there's the young master, Overhaul himself. I'm sure you know all about him. And that's that. I said. You're very thoroughly prepared for this, aren't you? Mario asked. Not nearly enough to take them on alone. That's why I came here for my internship. I figured you'd be investigating the recent intrusions into the city by the Hasakai and have sufficient connections in the community to pull off something this big. I just have one condition. I want in on it. I demanded. Nighty stood up from his chair and walked over to me, patting my back. You did good. And of course, you're in. He said with a smile, trying to use his quirk on me. Probably to check whether I am a spy or not. Just what I wanted. Immediately, I disabled his quirk and input a trance vision into his mind. He shook violently, as if he were having a heart attack, before collapsing onto the floor. Instantly, I knelt by his side, acting scared and panicked. Sir. Sir Nighty. Are you okay? I asked as Centipede called the ambulance. Of course, I knew he'd be fine. After he had experienced and memorized the vision, that is. Just the way I designed it to be. All according to plan. Nighty stood upon the ruins of a building. From the looks of it, it had been recently demolished. As recently as minutes ago. Even the dust hadn't settled yet. He walked forward, past the rubble, into a small building with a collapsed roof. Beneath the rubble lay a girl, blonde of hair, 2 messy buns adorned her head at the sides. Besides her bloody corpse sat a boy. A very familiar boy. Haru Shikimori. He used his quirk to clear the rubble from over the girl, all the while muttering something beneath his breath. The girl coughed, blood leaking from her mouth in small streams. Darling. She said, coughing up more blood. You look so beautiful when you cry. She mumbled between coughs. Just hold on. Just, please for the love of fuck, hold on. I'll take you to a hospital. Just. Haru muttered. It's okay. The girl said, I can't feel my legs. And the pain in my stomach is already dull. I won't make it. Just go. Run away. She insisted. No. He cried, tears streaming down his face, never. You're always so silly, darling Tilda, she said, before the light slowly faded from her eyes. Yet, Haru dug on. Soon the girl's corpse was free. Slowly, he stood up, carrying the girl in his arms, still muttering. Until he noticed it. Then, where Nighty expected sobbing, came an unearthly calm. But Nighty could see the rage and despair, seething, roiling beneath the surface as a silent fury replaced the boy's sudden sorrow. He turned around, carrying the girl away from the direction of the hospital and towards what he assumed was the epicenter of this destruction. Nighty followed behind him, a silent spectator. Soon they came upon a clearing, crushed flat by some unknown force, almost as if a meteor impact had occurred there. Then he saw it, no, him. All for one. Floating in the air, like a cruel god. At his feet lay the man Nighty had admired his whole life, just an emaciated husk of what he previously was. On the side, Haru climbed down the crater walls, sliding and even falling on some parts. Ultimately he ended up before the man himself. Heal her. He said, in a voice hoarse from crying. Heal her now. And maybe I'll let you die a quick painless death. All for One looked at the boy in amusement. And if I don't? He asked, prodding the boy like a cat to a cornered rat. The boy looked at the villain and nodded as if he got the message. He turned back and walked over to the edge of the crater, and laid the girl down on a relatively flat slab of concrete. The villain laughed and mocked. That's what I thought. He said. Did you know? Haru said, as he knelt by the girl, caressing her hair, did you know she was pregnant? He looked at the villain with dead eyes. Did you know how happy I was? My own wife. My very own child. Haru looked at the blood on his arms. Dead. Both of them. Dead. By your hands. He looked back at All for One and continued. You asked me what I'd do if you didn't heal her. Isn't that right, All for One? The boy said, through grinding teeth. Oh. Do tell. What is it that you think you can do to me, little boy? What can you do to me, when even the great All Might couldn't put a scratch on me? Haru pulled out an injector vial from his pocket and without hesitation, stuck it into his neck, emptying it in one go. Nighty recognized the vial. It was a drug he knew intimately. Trigger. The quirk enhancer drug. How did Haru get his hands on it? Then he saw the symbol on the sleeve of the injector. The symbol of the Hasakai. And not one that was used for use in shops. That meant Haru had stolen it from the Hasakai during the raid. How he knew that, Nighty didn't think to question. Tell me, boy. What do you think you can? All for One stopped mid-sentence, and looked at his arm, or rather the lack of it, blood pouring down in a red, misty shower. What? He cried in surprise. A voice echoed across the crater. Haru's voice. You asked me what I'd do if you didn't heal her. The voice said, as Nighty spotted Haru at the other end of the crater, with All for One's arm in his hand, veins of blue popping at their seams under his skin. I will tear you limb from limb, bone to bone, muscle to muscle and atom to atom until not even a single shred of your vile soul exists in this world. Tears of blood fell from Haru's eyes, as rings of gold lit up within them. At once, All for One was stuck in binding rings of bright glowing gold. Then, Haru disappeared, reappearing at another corner of the field, this time with a leg. All for One's right leg. Then came another leg and another arm. Then an ear, a handful of teeth, one ear, a chunk of skull, a pair of ribs. One by one, All for One watched himself get dismantled like an old Soviet Kalashnikov in the hands of a new recruit. So to say, badly and messily. With great and apparent pain. He begged as he best could, with half a tongue and 3 remaining teeth. Kill me! He screamed. But the respite of death came not. His regeneration was too strong. And that was his own undoing. For the next 10 minutes, Nighty watched a brutal, live torture of the greatest threat he had ever known, the man that stalked his nightmares and haunted his daylights. The very same man begging for the sweet release of death. And Nighty didn't know what to feel. Certainly not joy. This was far too cruel. But it wasn't as if he didn't understand Haru's pain. That was when it stopped. Haru released the bonds, unwilling, and collapsed onto the floor, just meters from his now mangled victim. Then he awoke, as violently as he had fallen asleep. What? He mumbled, as a bright light shone into his eyes. How many fingers am I holding up? Asked the doctor. What? How many fingers 3. And I'm perfectly fine. It's just a quirk mishap. No need to worry. Nighty said, looking around the room at his sidekicks and interns, his gaze lingering on Haru a mite more than the others. Are you all right, sir? Haru asked. Yes. No one needs to worry. I am perfectly fine. He looked at the time on his watch. 10:30 p.m. Too late. All of you, go back home. And no work tomorrow. The agency will be closed. Now leave me alone. I have stuff to ruminate upon. He said, as the others nodded and began to leave. As they left, he called out once more, and they turned. One more thing. He said, turning to Haru. Please wear condoms if you're going to do it. The future depends on it. Now that I had primed Nighty into believing that I could potentially defeat AFO, I had 2 more things to do before the day's end. I walked into my hotel room, and changed into a preset pair of clothes, before shape-shifting into a slightly taller man with a darker skin tone like that of Mirko's, my bones clacking, skin crawling into shape, and flesh aligning in all the right spots. Looks about right. I said in a far smoother, deeper, chocolatey voice. Exiting the hotel, I flew off into the distance, before arriving in front of a hospital. I walked over to the reception desk and inquired about a certain man. Tensia Tida. Then using trance, I wiped the receptionist's memory of me ever entering. Like a ghost, I tread the halls, towards his room. Opening the door, I saw Tida sleeping on a chair beside his brother. As I closed the door, behind me, Tida woke up, spotting me. "Who are you? This is a private room. Only family and doctors are allowed here," he said, alert. I ignored him, walking closer to Tensia, who was also awoken by the noise. "Hey! I'm talking to you," Tida said, attempting to put a hand on my shoulder, only to be biokinetically pushed back. He screamed in pain as his muscles cramped with a jolt. Thankfully, I had put up a soundproofing telekinetic barrier around the room beforehand, so no one could hear him scream. Ignoring Tida's screams, I placed a hand on Ingenium's forehead, as his body started healing an astonishing pace. Scabs and scars disappeared as if they had never existed. Bones put themselves together, nerves reconnected and tissues regenerated entire lost or damaged sections. Tensia sat there, shocked into silence. He could feel his legs again, the feeling of sore muscles, numb feet and wriggling toes. He cried tears of joy, attempting to grab his benefactor's hands, only to cry out in pain as his hands cramped, just like Tida's. Despite this, he looked at the man with a deep, grateful smile. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Tida noticed his brother's actions, and put two and two together. "This, I can't. I don't know how to thank you, sir, whoever you are," Tida said. "No need to thank me. I'm just here on a contract. Thank the person who bartered for my help. I believe you know him. A boy by the name of Haru Shikimori. If anything, I should thank you. Because of you, I get to have one of the strongest quirk users in my debt." What? Tida stuttered. "You have a good friend, boy. A very good friend. After all, my services don't come cheap. And my favors are always paid in blood," I said, with my best impression of a nasty B-grade TV drama villain, before disappearing into the hallways, the door closing behind me. Man, that was fun. I should do this more often. With two of the Tida siblings now in my debt, I had another set of pawns on my side of the board. Just one more thing left to do today. I flew back to the suburbs of Tokyo, and opened a detailed map of Japan, alongside Laplace Jr. Divining and eliminating locations, calculating probabilities. 2 hours later, I found it. In a small suburban neighborhood not far from me. I flew over, scanning the whole area with red reality. There it was. A massive underground compound and the exact people I was looking for. And inside was the most adorable little munchkin in the series. It was time to save Eri. I extended a trance jack into the compound, layering webs upon webs of mental surveillance, until I reached a young mind, engrossed in an episode of some Precure serial. Then, I waited. Soon the episode came to its climax. The magical girl used the power of friendship, dispelling the cursed miasma and destroying the villain with a heart-shaped light beam. Watching it, the girl's near-dead eyes lit up for the briefest of moments, as if she wanted to cheer, but was reflexively holding back. Oh, this poor child. Not knowing how to smile. Even my selfish dark hole of a heart can't bear to see this. But I must endure. For the plan to succeed. I waited, monitoring her thoughts, as moments passed. Then at last, she said the magic words. I wish. Yes. Go on, say it. I wish. She said, her eyes dulling again, as hopelessness took over. No, it won't happen. I'm cursed. Damn it. Girl. Have some faith. Fuck that shit. I'm going in now. I extended the trance jack to Eri and plunged it into her head. Why do you say that? I said. Eep. Eri cried out, before immediately putting her hands on her mouth. Who are you? I'm a friend. A friend? She asked cautiously. She had had friends over the past 2 years. All of them were liars. They worked for him. She knew it. She had learned not to trust them. There were no friends for someone like her. Someone who was cursed. You're not cursed. I said. But he says, my mother said. I don't care what anyone says. You are not cursed. And I don't work for him. I said. That's what they always say. But. She said, stuttering. Okay, how about this? I will come and save you from them. But only if you want me to. So tell me, do you want to be saved, Eri? I said. I'm imagining it. This isn't real. Eri muttered. Not this shit. I telekinetically caressed Eri's cheek, ruffling her hair, gently. It's all real. And I'm here to save you. I said. Really? Eri asked hesitantly. Yes. I assured. But you can't, he's too strong. He will hurt you. I don't want anyone to be hurt because of me anymore. She cried, tearing up. Don't worry. He won't hurt you or me. In fact, when I'm done with him, he won't hurt anyone anymore. So tell me, Eri, do you want to be saved? Yes. She sniffled. I can't hear you. Can you speak up a bit louder? I teased. Please save me. She cried out loud. That's all you had to say, baby. Now just you wait and watch. I said, patting the crying girl's head lovingly. The sound awoke everyone in the mansion, as Overhaul went into full alert. Immediately he checked Eri's cell, only to find its door open. In fact, all the doors were open. How did this happen, he wondered. Meanwhile, I froze everyone in the mansion simultaneously and silently, as opened the doors wide, with a generous application of telekinetic force. I had surrounded the mansion with a soundproof barrier once more. No one would be going in or getting out without my consent. I strode in gallantly, as all security systems malfunctioned, doors and secret entrances opened up, and like in the myth of Krishna, the jailers fell asleep. Only unlike Vasudeva, I wasn't breaking out of prison, I was breaking in. But the objective was the same. To save an innocent child. And while my current actions wouldn't be carved into myth, it certainly was the right thing to do. Overhaul resisted the urge to sleep with Herculean willpower, and failing that, with excruciating pain. He used his own quirk to make his nerves more sensitive, and stabbed himself in the arm, twisting the knife, its pain keeping him conscious. He stumbled out of his office, bleeding profusely and seething with rage. Whoever was behind this wouldn't leave here alive, he thought. I ignored him, immobilizing him with but a thought and a little biokinesis, just to make sure my identity remained safe. His muscles cramped and tore apart, as Overhaul fell limply to the floor, like a broken doll. I stood at the top of the stairs leading to the underground compound. Come, Eri. Walk out of your room with your own 2 feet. Break your shackles and come, I said, as Eri gingerly peeked out of her room, seeing the guards collapsed in a heap. Hesitantly, she put 1 step out, like a cat testing bath water, before puttying foot before foot and walking out, shaking like a chihuahua. Slowly, she followed the invisible hand's lead and arrived at the base of the stairs, the same ones she descended that fateful day. The stairs she never thought she would ever see again. Not in this way, at least. She looked up at the figure in the doorway, shrouded in a comforting silver gold aura, motes of light dispersing off his back. Come, I said, kneeling down and extending a hand to her. She looked at me in fear, expecting retribution, backing away. Come on, I won't bite. Besides, didn't I say I was here to save you? I assured. It was you, she questioned, still distrustful. Yup. Now come on. We don't have all day, or night, I said, as Eri ran up the stairs and into my arms, as I picked her up and walked over to the main office. At the door, Eri jerked and began to shiver at the sight of Overhaul. Pshaw. It's okay. He's not going to hurt you anymore. I took care of it, I said, patting her head, gently, as she buried her face in my collar. You won't get away with this, Overhaul mumbled from his mangled throat. Eri pushed against me, her teeth clattering in fear. Eri. Look at him. So long as I'm here, he can't do anything to you. Okay, I said, showing Eri his broken, decrepit form. Eri nodded in understanding, before burying her face in my collar again, unable to look at her tormentor for long. I ignored the man, and walked into the office, searching through the cabinets until I found the seal of the household. Taking out the adoption papers I had prepared beforehand, I stamped them with the seal, before putting it back where it came from. Now, taking out the adoption papers in Overhaul's drawer, I burnt them to a crisp. With this, Eri, you are my daughter now, I said, showing her the newly minted adoption papers. Eri nodded, not understanding what it meant. But that's okay. As I said in Haruto's case. Baby steps. Just the baby steps. With the papers dealt with, I wiped his and his subordinates' memory of Eri, took his quirk suppression bullets and a crate or 2 of trigger, before leaving for home. Under cover of night, I flew Eri over to the 4-bedroom apartment I had bought in Hamamatsu with the money from my song deals. Getting her settled, I made to leave only to be met by a concerned and shaking Eri. She looked at me pleadingly, as if to say, please don't leave me all alone. That was so cute. Damn it. I need to get rid of my affection for cute things, cause this is an actual biohazard of cuteness. Fine, I said, as I led Eri to her bed, and gently patted her, singing her a lullaby until she fell asleep, in my arms. And that's how my day ended, at 2:38 a.m. on a Monday night, or should I say, Tuesday morning, nursing a traumatized little girl to sleep. Come next morning, I made breakfast for Eri. Just a simple bacon, eggs in a nest, orange juice. Odd for a Japanese person, but still a hearty meal. Seeing Eri munch on the food cutely, was a treat in and of itself. After breakfast, I called Imiko and Haruto over to meet their new family member. Papa! Haruto cried and ran up to me, jumping in my arms. Darling Tilda, Imiko cooed, upon seeing me, only to fall silent at the sight of Eri, who had hidden behind me. You picked up another kid, didn't you? She asked. He. You know it, I said. What's her story? She asked. Well, her name is Eri, and as for what happened to her, why don't we have a seat first? Then I can tell you all about it, I suggested. Fine. But there had better be a good reason for this, Imiko said, playfully pouting. As we sat down at a secluded little cafe, I explained Eri's backstory to the both of them, though mostly to Imiko. After all, for all Haruto knew, he was getting a new little sister, and he was jumping in joy at it. By the end, Imiko was in tears. "You poor, poor baby," she said, closing Eri in a bear hug. Eri protested, only to be ignored. "Don't worry, Mama will take care of you from now on," Imiko added, as Eri softened, and broke down into little sobs, sniffling away, with Imiko comforting her. Thankfully, it was after the lunch rush, and we were the only customers in the small cafe. Yet, the cafe staff had overheard Eri's story too. And they were sympathetic and understanding about the scene. They even gave Eri a free slice of cake. Once Eri had calmed down and eaten her cake with great relish, we got down to business. Buying clothes for Eri. Or at least that's what Imiko and Haruto did. Me on the other hand. I had other things to occupy my time. And a hero killer to hunt. I walked into the city center and spread out my spirit sense across Hoju. Within seconds, I found him. He was cooking a late lunch in an abandoned building in the southern corner of town. Good. Now it's time to wait and prepare the filler. I pulled out my camera and mic, and began to walk around, interviewing people. "Hello, if I may have a minute of your time?" I asked a middle-aged housewife returning from the supermarket. "Are you from a news channel?" she asked. "Yes. I would like to ask, what do you think about the recent attacks by the hero killer that have taken place in this city?" "About that?" And so I spent the day, gathering testimonials, doing street interviews and filming the locations of the attacks as I slowly closed in on him. As the curtain of night fell upon the city, Stain left his hideout, heading for the downtown area. About an hour into his search, he came across his target, the hero native. Bingo! Now, I just have to pretend to run into them while filming. I made my way to the alley where Stain had cornered the hero and walk in, looking as if I was engrossed in filming the streets, and didn't even notice the things happening in the alley before me, as I walked right into native, stunning him into silence for a moment. Capitalizing on his silence, I began my plan. Oh sorry. I didn't mean to. I acted, seeing the blood on the hero, and panicking, "Oh no. Are you okay? I didn't think you would start bleeding from bumping into me. Just hold on a minute, I think I have a first aid kit SOM. Run," native said, interrupting me, pushing me away. "It's the hero killer. Run. And call for help," he said. I pretended not to have noticed Stain, raising my head in terror, looking behind the hero to see the man himself. "Stop, villain," I said, filming the whole encounter with my camera that I had happened to place on the nearby trash can at just the right angle to capture everything. "This is a citizen arrest," I said, activating my quirk, and immobilized Stain down to the very tips of his fingers. Next, I called the police, and informed them of my work and propped native up by the trash can with NY Canara on it. "I recognize you," Stain said, "You're Haru. The boy who gave the speech at the UA Sports Festival. Why are you stopping me? Don't you recognize this yourself? Didn't you say that there are too many fake heroes? All I'm doing is disposing of the trash. The fakes need not live. They pollute the idea of a hero, just by existing. Don't you understand? Society needs more people like you, real heroes, not fakes like Native or Endeavor. You're right, Stain. And I do understand you, believe me I do. But tell me, Stain, would a real hero let you kill someone in front of them, even if they were ideologically opposed to the victim? I said, pumping up my chest and standing between him and Native as gallantly as I could. Hey he ha 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 ha. Yes. That's what a real hero is like. You're as good, no, better than I expected. Shikimori Haru. You really are a true hero. But unfortunately, I will still have to kill Native. Fakes cannot be allowed to exist, to desecrate the name of a hero. Stain said. Suddenly an explosion rang out behind me and all across the city as well. The Nomus attack on Hoju had begun. Ahihihi. Hero. Are you going to just stand around and let the explosions go unattended? Don't you have people to save? He asked. I acted as if I was conflicted about it. Then, I thumped my fist on my palm in realization. With a flourish, I tore off my shirt, revealing the lean, tough muscles and 8-pack abs underneath, in full view of the camera. I then proceeded to fashion the torn shirt into a rope, that I tied Stain's hands with, behind his back. Propping him against a wall, I disarmed him, putting his weapons in the trash can, and put my phone in Native's hand and told him to wait for help, as I ran towards the nearest explosion, leaving my camera behind. All according to plan. I was sure that Stain would escape his bonds and then take the camera to post this encounter online, raising my fame to a whole new level. Meanwhile, the other citizens would record and post their own testimonials of how I stopped the Nomus single-handedly and saved the city soon. But for that, I have to first stop the Nomus. And to that end, I rushed to the first Nomu, the one that was attacking a train. I stopped it before it entered the train proper and prevented the train from derailing. Now with his attention on me, I released the Nomu and fled the scene with remote control on my muscles, passing by the alleys until I found the winged Nomu and with a run up a nearby building, I landed on it, the pale Nomu from the train close behind. As the pale Nomu jumped after me, to climb onto the winged one, I jumped off and landed on the street, but not before immobilizing the two in midair, restricting every possible quirk dispensal point, be it the mouth, fingers or even the wings. As I landed, I noticed people filming my fight with the Nomus and smiled for the camera. Now please evacuate to a safe location please, and someone call the police to catch them. Tell them it's a citizen's arrest and that the quirk use was done in self-defense. Thanks. I said, before running up the side of another building till I spotted the third and last Nomu, not far from where I was. I stopped that one too, including its fire-breathing mouth as the local heroes subdued it. All without the help of Endeavor, thus robbing him of the credit he unjustly gained for it in canon as well as reducing the destruction done to the city. This wasn't just a win-win scenario. This was a win-win-win-win scenario. Then as the police arrived, minutes later with the capture maidens for the Nomus, I slipped away into the night, fancying myself a silent guardian, a watchful protector, a dark knight. Or at least that's the Batman impression I pulled off on a suitable skyscraper a couple blocks away. Why? 'Cause it's fun. That's why. And I damn well deserved to have some fun after a whole day of playing mastermind. As I returned home after escorting everyone back, I found my mom waiting for me on the porch, a complex look on her face. Then she uttered the four most dreaded words in any relationship. We need to talk. I followed her into the house and sat across her and my father as they looked at me expectantly. So, What did you want to talk about? I asked. Don't you have something to tell us? My father asked in return. What now? I tried using mind reading on my father, only for him to glare at me. His quirk had alerted him of it like always. And here I thought my skills had improved. The more you know, I guess. I acted innocent and replied. No. Nothing in particular. All right then. If that's how you're going to play this, then how about you explain this? He said, switching on the TV, only to press the wrong button. The blank screen. I teased. You. He replied, indignant, pressing the right button this time, as a news broadcast came on the screen. Shikimori Haru, recently famous for his explosive and intensely divisive speech at the UA Sports Festival, has proven true to his word today, with the single-handed capture of the notorious hero killer, Stain in the Hoju City attack by the League of Villains. Though he regrettably escaped from police custody shortly after. Shikimori-kun's brave efforts in containing the League's human weapons, now known as Nomus, was also noted by the public. The broadcast then shifted onto the common public's testimonials on my actions. He was so cool, swooping down to save us. The Nomu was barely inches from my face when he was stopped by golden rings of light. A young boy who was on the train said. When we saw the villains, my first thought was, I'm going to die. My daughter is going to die. We're all going to die. But then another villain crashed onto the first and this boy jumped off its back. I think he stopped them with his quirk. If you're seeing this, thank you so much. You saved our lives. I can't thank you enough. A middle-aged mother of two said, as the broadcast panned back to the newsroom. Some, though, have a wholly different view of the student's heroics, with the Hero Public Safety Commission condemning his actions as unnecessary and reckless, even as the heroes on the ground praise his efforts. He is today, as he was last week, an increasingly divisive figure in the modern discourse on hero society and the morality of heroics in action. What's more intriguing is the recent video of the hero killer himself acknowledging Shikimori Haru as a true hero, unlike the so-called fakes he fights against. My father switched off the TV screen and looked at me, proud and disappointed at the same time. So? He asked. So what? I said, confused. What were you doing in Hoju when your internship is in the suburbs on the other side of the district? Haru, playing truant is unbefitting of you. I expected more from you. A little bit of maturity for once. He scolded. But there was no internship work today. Sir Knighty said so himself. You can ask him. I said. My parents looked surprised, as they contemplated my words, coming to terms with their assumptions of me being wrong. Unwilling to let go of his framework though, as most Asian parents tend to be, my father continued. If you didn't have internship work today, then why didn't you come straight home? Why were you loitering about in Hoju? He asked. I was filming a documentary about Stain. I answered. You mean you were actively looking for a man that was known for killing heroes? My mother said. No, Mama. I was just taking interviews of locals and filming the locations where he'd done the stuff before. I happened upon him by complete chance. I defended. Oh really? Then show me the interviews. You filmed them, right? She asked. I did, but I forgot it in the commotion. But I really was just doing interviews. The whole day. A whole day of interviews. Because I remember seeing a transaction alert at a mall in northern Hoju. You needed 56k for interviews. My father interjected. Well, not the whole day, but, I said, only to be met by the glares of both of my parents. Fine. But you have to promise not to get mad at me. No matter what. I said. Their frowns softened suddenly, as they leaned closer to me, and assured. It's okay. We promise. But you have to tell us everything about it, okay? I'll try. I replied. So, is it drugs? My mother prodded. Wait, what, drugs? Really, Mama? That's how low you think of me? I said, turning the conversational tables on her. That's not what I meant. She said, reeling back. If it's not drugs, then what? Is it a girl? My father asked. In a way, yes. I said, but it's better if I show you. Are you up for a drive? Where to? He asked. Kamino, Yokohama. I answered. As we arrived at the small apartment above the bar, I led my parents up the stairs to the door of my beloved, and with great courage summoned from the depths of my being, I knocked. Once, then twice, before the door opened, revealing a pajama-clad Imiko, looking like a snack in her own cute way. Darling Tilda, she hummed, half asleep, leaning in for a kiss. Only then did she spot them. My parents. Immediately she shot to attention, as I dropped on her the same bombshell my mother dropped on me just hours ago. We need to talk. She nodded, and let us in, before heading to the bedrooms to make sure that the kids were asleep. As we settled on the couches, Imiko brought out mugs of tea, these in the style of kids' cartoons. That and the small bike I had bought for Haruto a couple weeks back was enough of a clue for them to catch on. How long? My father asked, as my mother glared daggers into Imiko, who in turn shrunk inwards, nestling into me. How long what? I asked, even as Imiko answered. 7 months left now. How long what? And what 7 months left for what? We started dating 2 months ago. I asked. Immediately I used Laplace Jr. to find out. Oh no. Oh no 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 no. Imiko looked me in the eyes and returned the favor for my earlier transgression, dropping the bombshell I joked about mere months ago. I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant. Imiko said. What? I looked at her aghast, as my parents spit out their coffee, reducing my mother to coughing fits. The noise from the coughing woke up the kids, as the two of them walked out in pajamas, rubbing their eyes. Mama, are you okay? Haruto asked, until he saw me. Papa! He cried, jumping into my lap. Papa, you're staying with us, right? He asked, as my parents almost rolled over dead. My mother forced her coughing to stop with sheer force of will and grabbed a nearby newspaper, rolling it into a stick. Haru! What is this? She said, slamming the news roll onto my head. Ow, Mama! No! There you, I said, as another bonking landed on my head. Then another, until my father stopped her, pulling her back to the couch. Haru, whose kids are these? And don't say yours. I am not an idiot. These two are at least 5 years old. Neither you nor Imiko could have possibly conceived them. So the truth, Haru. No more lies, understand? He said. Yeah, of course. But they are my children, Papa. I said, as Haruto interrupted. Papa. But I thought you were Papa, Papa. He said, confused. No, Haruto, I'm your Papa, and he is Papa's Papa. I said, as he ran the hamster wheels in his brain trying to rationalize it. Meanwhile, I returned to the conversation with my father. As I was saying, they are my children. Use your quirk and see if there is something wrong with what I said. See for yourself, I said. He nodded in agreement. You see, they have had a rather horrific childhood, I said, showing him Haruto's scars. That's horrible. What sort of parent would do that to their own child? Bad ones. Very bad ones. And the government wasn't helping. I checked. Trust me, I checked. No one, not heroes, not the police. No one wanted to help them. So I had to take control of the situation. I couldn't just see it happen and turn a blind eye. So, I adopted them. Well, not me per se, since I'm still 15, but Imiko did. At least with us they'll have a decent childhood. For a moment, there was an uncomfortable silence in the room, as Eri crept closer to me, and sat by my side. What about the baby in Imiko then? In fact, Imiko, where are your parents? What do they have to say about this? My father asked. Imiko looked downcast, and made to speak, before I put a hand on her shoulder. I'll tell them. Don't force yourself. She nodded as I continued. Imiko made some mistakes. Her quirk went out of control and she hurt some people. She was acquitted of all charges, of course, but her parents, they disowned her for it. I'm sorry, my father said, as my mother did the same. Why didn't you tell us about this before? How long has this been going on? Don't you trust us? My mother asked. I just didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how you'd take the news, I said. You didn't trust us is what? We'd never disown you, Haru. Believe me, we love you more than we love ourselves, my mother said. Now I wouldn't say that, my father joked, only to get smacked on the head with the newspaper roll. Geez, take a joke, Ao-chan, he said. This is no time to be joking, she said, and this is no place to raise children. All of you are coming to the farm with us. You're too young to be doing this. Focus on your studies. We'll take care of them, she said, grabbing Eri from the couch, and sitting her in her lap, even as Eri squirmed uncomfortably. She looked at me pleadingly. I sighed. Mama, Eri is a bit uncomfortable with strangers. Can you give her back? She's not liking it, I said. No, she said, looking at Eri. Don't worry, Eri-chan, I won't bite. Eri begged me with her eyes desperately, as she went into a panic attack. I rushed over and pulled her away and comforted her with pats on the back. Eri-chan was abused by her guardians. Severely abused. She has PTSD from her time as a captive. It's not good for her health to be thrust into unfamiliar situations alone, I explained, gently. I see. Sorry, Eri-chan. I won't force you. Will you forgive me? My mother asked as Eri slowly calmed down in my arms. Eri, won't you forgive Grandma? I asked as Eri nodded softly, before clutching to me with a death grip. My mother cooed at being called Grandma, as my father looked around, accounting for the items in the room. Okay then, pack your bags. We're going to the farm. Haru, help me put these in the trailer, he said, pointing at the furniture. No, Papa, the furniture is the landlord's, I said. Even the bike? He asked. No. Not the bike. That's ours. All right. I'll take this down. You bring the rest of the stuff. Imiko nodded, and walked into the bedroom and started packing the essentials. As I picked up the bags and headed down, my father pulled me aside. "Haru, you're going to take responsibility for this, right?" he asked. "I will adopt the children too, if that's what you mean," I said, acting innocent. "You're a smart boy, so I didn't think I'd need to tell you about it, but here goes," he said. "You need to marry her, Haru. Be a man about it." "I'm 15, Papa. I'm too young to get married," I protested. "Not too young to be playing in the bedroom though, are you? Besides, you don't have to do it just yet. Just be ready for it when you're of age," he said. "We'll see about that," I said. "No, we won't. And before you say anything else, there's no negotiating this. I said it and it's final, understand?" he said, sternly, and walked back up the stairs without waiting for an answer. Upstairs my mother called me. "Haru, come up here for a minute." I walked up and saw my mother holding a glass cylinder. "Oh. That was the cylinder we used to incorporate quirks into Haruto. What is this thing? And why does it smell like spirit?" And she sniffed closer. "Is that blood?" "Ah, that's an test tube." Imiko was doing an experiment for a school project, about forensics. "Right, Imiko?" I said, looking at her. "Ah, yes. I mean, yeah, a project. I was testing the rate at which blood decomposes in forensic sites under different conditions." "Don't worry, it's all my blood," she stuttered out. "Fuck. Why did you need to stutter all about it? Will she even believe it anymore?" My mother nodded in understanding. "It's good that you continued your studies, even after what happened. That's admirable. So, this project is over, right? Do you still need it, or should we just leave it here?" she asked. She believed it. She really believed it. I checked with Trance, and to my great surprise, she actually believed it. Holy fuck. Was it because of the roller coaster of revelations that she'd gone through today? Or something else entirely? I didn't know, and honestly, I didn't care at this point. It'd be a waste to just leave it here. It wasn't cheap after all, I said, taking it from her, before she could get any more ideas. Soon we packed up and left for the farm, and one of my worries was taken care of like to split. The next day, I arrived at Nighty's office, whistling happily. "You seem happy," Mario asked, popping out of a wall. "That's because I am happy," I said, pushing him back into the wall. "And why is that?" asked Mario. "Because I am going to be a father," I said. "Oh, congratulate what?" he exclaimed, his jaw hanging slack in shock. Centipede turned to look at me, shaking his head in defeat as Bubble Girl looked on confused. Nighty himself face-palmed, muttering, "So the future can't be changed after all. What's this about a future? The future can always be changed. You just need to creative about it," I said. "Do you even know what I am talking about? Do you know what I saw when I read your future?" he said, exasperated. "What did you see, sir? It can't be too bad, right?" I asked, feigning ignorance. Of course, I knew what he saw. It was my own creation after all. "I saw you carry your girlfriend's corpse from the rubble of Kamino. I saw you cry tears of blood. I saw you kill the greatest villain in the world with your bare hands and die alongside him," he said. "That sounds bad," I said, the irony of the situation not lost on me. What's her name? I asked. What? If you saw the future, surely I must have said her name, once or twice. I asked, still acting as if I didn't believe him. Her name is Imiko. She has two messy hair buns, wears loose-fitting clothing. Calls you darling. Is that enough proof for you? He said, annoyed. That is more than enough, I said, putting on a serious face, and sat down. Tell me more, I said. Are you sure? He asked. Yes, I answered resolutely. All right. But not a single word of this leaves this room, understand? Of course, I said, as the others nodded. It happens sometime in the near future. In Kamino, Yokohama. A villain called All for One attacks and defeats All Might, maybe even kills him. And that's where you come in. You kill All for One, in vengeance, albeit at great cost. That's way I had hoped to avoid, when I told you to wear a condom. But of course it wasn't that easy. Fate slapped me right in the face for the being delusional enough to think that it could be changed. He said, lamenting. That's it? I asked. What do you mean that's it? Your girlfriend dies, your unborn child dies, you die. He cried. No. That's what you think will happen. The future isn't static. It can be changed. And I'll change it, I said. Didn't you just see what happened to you? Just today even. What makes you think that you can do what no one has ever done? He asked. Did you think you'd get to the Hasakai this fast when you started this investigation? I asked. No, but I knew I would get to them eventually. He said, countering my point. Say, could a quirkless person pass the UA entrance exam? I asked. No. Of course not. What are you? Oh. That. Of course you're talking about him. Still, he didn't do that all alone. He had your help. It doesn't count. He said. That's my point. He had my help in overturning fate and now so do you. Doesn't that count towards proving my record of changing the future, doing the impossible and all other self-defeatist vagaries of the sort? I said. That is a way I hadn't thought of it. And maybe, just maybe, if you're right, we can even save Sensei. He said. Great. Now then, sir, I have some great news regarding the Shihasakai case. I said. And that would be? I found their hideout and the location of Rapper. I said, handing him the address. That's great. I'll contact the police immediately. He said, picking up the phone. Hello, Detective Zukorki. Yes, we found the hideout. Yes, today if possible. Yeah, I understand. Thank you for your cooperation. Bye. He said, concluding the call. We're raiding them tomorrow. Be prepared. We'll meet the other parties involved today, and plan our steps. Do you have any information about the layout of the base? He asked. No. I just tracked Rapper to the hideout. He was in there for over 4 hours. I informed. Why 4 hours? Mario asked. I don't know. I didn't keep watch after 4 hours. It was getting late, and I was hungry. So for all we know, he could very well still be there or he may have left it. But what I know for sure is that he walked in there with a bag of groceries, so he probably lives there full time. I explained. I understand. Now, before you go on patrol with Mario again, let's talk about the final issue with you. Your vigilantism in Hoju yesterday. He said. In my defense, I stumbled into the situation with Stain when I was out shopping with my girlfriend. And all my actions were in self-defense. And since I wasn't under your watch, your agency won't be affected. Rest assured, I've secured all avenues of contest. It's the least I could do. I assured. You really have a plan for everything, don't you? Mario asked. That aside, I'll still have to take responsibility for it. It's the Hero Public Safety Commission policy. You can't do anything about it. I just wanted to say that you shouldn't blame yourself for it. You did good. But apparently my concerns were unnecessary. He said, with a glad smile. I'm proud to be your mentor, Haru. He said. Thanks. I replied, stunned at his genuineness. Fuck. Who compliments people out of the blue like that? I cupped my face with my hands, hiding my ear-to-ear grin, and the blush that it came with. Ho. So you are still a normal boy, huh? Centipede teased, as Bubble Girl and Mario chuckled. That evening we attended the meeting with all the hero agencies concerned with the investigation, as well as the police force, namely, Rocklock, Mirko, Eraserhead, and Gran Torino. Why weren't Fat Gum and Ryukyu here? Because they only joined the investigation due to rapid spread of Trigger in a couple of months in canon. This time with me stealing the shipments of Trigger and Quirk destroying bullets, as well as their data on it, there was no distribution of drugs and thus, no involvement from the drug-fighting heroes. The combined force was still weaker of course, but with me here, there was no need for worry. As we sat down around the table, Detective Zukorki began his explanation. As you all know, we've been on the lookout for any opportunities to take down the Shihasakai ever since they started their war for territory with the Abegawa Tenchuakai last year. Now, while we don't have any evidence on the leader, Kai Chiseki, we do have probable cause with an underling of his. One of Mirko's associates, an illegal underground fighter, called Rapper. Oh, that guy. It's been a while since I saw him. He used to be a regular in my jurisdiction until a couple months back, when he suddenly dropped off the radar. I was wondering what took him. Mirko said. And that's why you're here. We need you to capture him, while we go after Overhaul. Can you handle it alone? Detective Zukorki asked. Definitely. She said excited. All right. This will be a simple extraction operation. Mirko will handle Rapper, Rocklock and Gran Torino will run crowd control, while Sir Nighty and Eraserhead will take on Overhaul. Any questions? He said. Yeah, one. What are two students doing here? This is supposed to be for professional heroes, not wet behind the ears, baby chicks. Even more so with that boy, Shikimori Haru. He engaged in vigilantism just yesterday. How can we trust them with our backs? Rocklock asked. Don't be so stuck up, Rocklock. I engaged in vigilantism when I was their age, hell, even younger than them. Mirko said. Oh, don't underestimate Haru either. He's been at this vigilante gig since he was 11. And that's what we know of him. Who knows what else he's been doing behind our backs? Aizawa-sensei added. Rocklock. Trust me on this, Mario is as good as a pro hero, and twice as dedicated to the profession. As for Haru, all the evidence, member profiles and even the location of their hideout, was gathered by Haru, single-handedly. He did in a week what took me 4 months of work to do. He is more than capable of handling himself. Rocklock thought for a moment. All right, if you vouch for them. But they stay out of harm's way. That is non-negotiable. I'm not risking their lives in our crusade. He said. Don't worry, I won't take a single step inside their base, Rocklock. I promise. I said, assuringly. Rocklock nodded, as Nighty and Eraserhead looked at me, puzzled. Good. Then, moving on to the members, from Haru's investigation, these are the members and their quirks. We cross-referenced their IDs within our database and created these profiles. Most of them are heavy hitters and will need to be pacified. To that end, we'll bring tranquilizers and sleeping gas with us, in case of emergency. Now, let's discuss the projected layout of their headquarters. 3 hours later, as the meeting ended, I was let go for the day, with a reminder for the 8:30 raid next morning. As I returned home that day, Haruto ran up to me, giving me a big hug. Papa. Welcome back. He said, nuzzling into me, as I patted his head. Eri looked on hesitantly by door, unsure of what to do. I put Haruto down, and ran over to Eri, scooping her up. Not going to welcome me home, Eri-chan? I said, tickling her, as she burst into cute little giggles, rolling down on the floor. Stop, Stu-oop. Eri cried out. Welcome home, darling, Tilda Emiko said, walking out. She kneeled down beside me, planting a kiss on my lips. Ah! A perfect family. The dream of any man. I picked up Eri, and walked in, greeting my parents. I'm home, Mama. I said. Good. Set the table, will you? She said. I nodded, as my father came in from the garden. Oh. You're back, Haru. How was your internship? He asked. It was fine. We're going to raid a Yakuza outfit tomorrow. Got praised for my good work in Hoju. The usual. I said. Good. Good. Wait, what was that in the middle? He asked. I got praised for my work in Hoju. I joked. Why are you raiding a Yakuza outfit? Why are you even on the mission? You're just a student still. He said. I asked to be on the team, Papa, it was my choice. Besides, I have experience in the field. Remember, when I stopped the Tokyo terrorist attack and the attack on the USJ? I also took down the Hoju villains. I am more qualified and prepared for it than even some heroes. I explained. But this isn't some one-off fight, these are proper organizations of villains. Are you sure about this? My mother interjected. Yes, Mama. In fact, I won't even go into the base. I will be staying outside and containing the villains that the other heroes catch, completely out of the way of the action. I said. That's great. She said, finally you've gotten some sense into you. That's a good choice, Haru. Leave the fighting to the pros. My father praised, as my mother opened the pot on the table. Spicy meat and potatoes. My favorite. I said. My mother chuckled and replied. You say that towards all of my dishes, Haru. That's because all of your food is delicious. I said, pouring myself a generous helping. After dinner, I put the kids to bed, reading them their bedtime stories, and caressing Eri till her nightmares settled down, before going to sleep myself. As unconsciousness took me, I thought to myself, what a beautiful world. The next morning at 8:30 a.m. sharp, we stood outside the Shihasakai base, encircling it. Everyone's here, Detective Zukorki asked, accounting the numbers. Good. We begin in 3 minutes. Get ready, he said, moving towards the door. Ringing the doorbell, he picked up his megaphone and announced. Shihasakai. You're surrounded. Surrender peacefully and we'll reduce your charges. Fight back and you'll get the harshest sentence possible. You have 3 minutes to exit the complex, hands up and unarmed. Resistance is futile, so make both of our jobs easier and give up. Oh, we'll give up all right. Give up your lives to the code, bitches. A Yakuza member shouted from within as the door to the compound exploded, shrapnel flying everywhere, as a giant of a man came barreling through. Immediately, I seized him in my bonds and immobilized him. Next, moving into full view of the door, I projected my eyes across the building, binding every Yakuza member within seconds. I turned to Rocklock and smirked. See? Not a single foot in the door. Jackass. Rocklock said, shaking his head. Now, Detective Zukorki, if you would use the tranquilizers on them, that'd be great. I can't hold them for long. Just about 20 or so minutes at most. So if you could get moving. Yes. At once. He signaled the snipers to follow as the heroes and the police entered, followed shortly by the snipers who came down from their perches on nearby buildings. Within minutes the operation was over, Rapper was in custody, Joy Renekar was tranquilized and dug out of the wall he had merged with in a desperate attempt at opposition. The hardest to get, though, were Seikeki and the barrier monk, Seikeki because he destabilized anyone that came near, and the barrier monk for obvious reasons. They were only captured later, with Aizawa-sensei raising their quirks. Overhaul struggled in futility, even as his recently healed wounds flared up, limiting his movements, leading to a smooth capture. All in all, like every other event, when it came to my powers, the results were anticlimactic at best. What was more interesting was him struggling when he saw me, recognizing me from the other night, shouting threats at me. You. It's you. This is all your fault, even Yarag. No. What did you do? You. I'll kill you. I'll kill you family. I'll destroy everything you ever loved, you monster. I was so close to achieving my dream, but you had to ruin it. I'll you mams. The police placed a muzzle on him and stuffed his mouth, like a dog, to stop him from screaming. As for why no one realized anything about my attacks from his threats, that'd be the gears at work. That night as I left, wiping his memory of Eri, I also added a gears in his mind that stopped him from ever mentioning my actions from that night or anything related to it at the cost of nerve-wracking, blood-curdling pain. That was enough of an incentive for him to shut up about it. Not enough to not threaten me though, of course. And for all that the heroes knew, he was mad at me for my actions in dismantling his organization in today's raid. Sorry about that. And don't worry about his threats. Once he's tried for his crimes, he's almost certain to face life in prison. Detective Zukorki assured. Why's that? I asked, feigning ignorance. We found a dungeon in the compound, and bloody clothes belonging to a little girl, maybe 6 years old. Zukorki said. It was a horrible sight. Don't know what he did to the kid, but she's nowhere to be found. Likely dead. Or worse. He won't get away with it. I'll make sure of it. Rocklock said, clenching his fist. If only we'd done this earlier. If only we hadn't waited this long. If we'd raided them right when you gave us the whereabouts. Mairio said, shaking. It's not your fault, Mario. Don't blame yourself over it. Sir Knighty said. The blood was still fresh. It couldn't have been 3 days, maybe 4 since. He said. I know. But sometimes that is the price you have to pay for doing things the right way. You can't save everyone, Mario-senpai. I comforted him, subtly planting the idea of a grey world in his psyche. Being a paragon hero wasn't easy. But more than that, it was incompatible with my plans for the future. And so, Mario must change to my specifications. If not by words, then by force. And so ended the raid on Shihasakai, a while 5 months in advance of canon and without the joint effort of a countrywide selection of heroes, elevating me higher in the public's view as coverage of the raid exploded across the nation. Thankfully, Chisaki was also the sort of man who never kept clear records or photos of Eri around, and the ones he had, were destroyed by me that night. No one would be coming for Eri. Neither from the official nor from the underground channels. And with that, another part of my plan was complete, with all of their blood samples already integrated into Haruto 3 days prior, after my first raid of their base. Now only 5 groups of interest remains. AFO, HPSC, the Metahuman Liberation Front, Quirk Supremacists, and the United World Federation. Of course, Stain, now free, was also a massive force of nature, inspiring similar vigilantism across the world with his new series of videos. But all would be dealt with, in due time. That's it, guys. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe the channel if you like it. And tell me in the comment section down below if you have any recommendation.